Good evening. There's a few more people trickling in, but I figured I might as well start. I'm Brian Fariso, the director of the Portland Art Museum, and thank you for being here for On the Ground, Mercy Corps, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. For us, exhibiting the Enclave at the Portland Art Museum fulfills our mission of bringing the world to Oregon. Through this powerful work, our understanding of the world is expanded, making what Richard Mosse calls an opaque place visible. The work also reinforces this museum's commitment in presenting art that challenges our views, presenting a complex set of circumstances that are beyond a singular interpretation and that evoke a range of emotional responses. Through beautifully seductive, disturbing, and confusing images that are amplified by sound and very skillful editing, the Enclave is a commanding work of art that certainly cannot be ignored. I am extremely proud that the Enclave is in Portland and its first U.S. museum presentation is here, and I owe a lot of thanks to a number of people. Firstly, I'd like to recognize my co-curator for the project, Dr. Julia Dolan, the minor white curator of photography, for her immediate embrace of this project and bringing it to our city. Thank you, Julia. Additionally, on staff, there are a number of people I'd like to recognize, and to name a few, they include Donald Urquhart, J.S. May, Louisa Geyer, Mike Morosky, and Stephanie Parrish. All of them helped, and they took on an extra amount of work to make this happen. Thank you very, very much. As many of you will see in the exhibition, a number of generous donors contributed to the Enclave. Major sponsors include Mary and Tim Boyle, Jasmine and Matt Felton, Catherine and James Gentry, Nancy LaMotta, Priscilla Bernard Wyden and Dan Wyden, and Helen Joe and Bill Witzel. And Bill Witzel's with us here tonight. So Bill, thank you very, very much for your support. I would also like to thank Mercy Corps and in particular CEO Neil Kenny Geyer and his team. Neil immediately understood the power of this work and how the possibilities could emerge for us to collaborate with them. Thanks to Mercy Corps, hundreds of local middle and high school students are participating in workshops that bring them to the museum and to the Mercy Corps Action Center to learn more about the conflicts in the DRC and community development efforts. A big thanks to Neil and his entire team. Thank you very, very much, Neil. And I know Megan is here as well. Thank you. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Craig Redmond, who will introduce the rest of our evening speakers. Craig is the Senior Vice President of Programs at Mercy Corps, where he oversees programs in 42 countries. He has worked at Mercy Corps for over 14 years and previously served as the Regional Program Director for South and Southeast Asia, based in Jakarta, Indonesia. In his time at Mercy Corps, his work has covered sectors including food, security, agriculture, water and sanitation, health and hygiene, financial services and business development, energy, and emergency response. Prior to joining Mercy Corps, he served at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the United Nations Development Program. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Craig Redmond. Craig.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's really a pleasure to be here. What a great place for us to be talking about the DRC tonight. Really a pleasure. I don't think we've ever done this kind of thing amidst frescoes and beautiful statues, and so it kind of adds a gravitas to the whole thing that I really love. A huge thank you to the Portland Art Museum. In particular, I want to thank Brian and J.S. May and Louisa Geyer and Stephanie Parrish for your wonderful support of this initiative. It's just wonderful. It's great to be working on this together and really a pleasure for us to be here tonight. You know, Mercy Corps, as a major, one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the United States, it's really great that we're here in Portland and we receive wonderful support from this city and from the state, and so it's great to be with you all tonight. Mercy Corps works in 42 countries, as Brian said, 42, not just 42 countries, but some of the toughest countries on Earth. If you go to the Human Development Index, which has a set of indicators about how countries are doing with regard to education and access to water and employment and some of those basic indicators, health, some of those basic indicators, and you go all the way down to the bottom, and you look at the toughest, the bottom 20, Mercy Corps is in 16 of those 20 countries. We like to say we work on the toughest problems in some of the toughest places on Earth, and we're very proud of that fact. DRC, the country we're going to be talking about tonight, is one of those places. In fact, if you think about the confluence of all these very complicated issues, high mortality and morbidity rates, low education levels, serious poverty issues, serious problems around conflict, poor governance, and all of that, and then sprinkle on top of that the fact that the place has incredible resources, you can imagine how complex it is. The way we're able to work in a place like that is there's nothing magic about it. Basically, we try to understand the context, we try to really deeply understand what makes a place tick or not, and then we try to do what we can to solve the problem from the inside with communities. The other secret part of this whole thing is that we just have great people. We have wonderful people who are committed, who have big brains and big hearts, and we're lucky to have a few of those people. We actually, in the audience, we have a lot of those people from Mercy Corps. And we have two from DRC here with us tonight. We have Mark Dwyer, and we have Solenne Delga, and they're with us. They're senior leaders from our program in DRC. Mark is the country director there. He's worked in places like Kenya, and he's worked in tough places in Ethiopia, and in fact also worked with his family in Siberia. He's not from Siberia, but his family's from Siberia. Mark knows what it's like to try to get things done in difficult and complicated places. And Solenne also has a wonderful background that she brings to the program. She's worked in South Sudan and also in Kenya and really tough places like Somalia. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our two wonderful staff and team members and leaders from that incredible place, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mark and Solenne. Thank you.
Wow, lots of people. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say a big thanks for having this opportunity to speak in front of so many people in such an unusual setting for us. It's just unusual for us. We're not used to this. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask an initial question. How many of you have actually seen the exhibition? Just so that we can. Okay, well, almost everyone. Okay, that's thank you very much. As Craig has just said, the DRC is one of the world's fragile states, which means that which is characterized by chronic insecurity, the absence of state, low education, and high levels of corruption. And the DRC is really one of the I mean, it has it all. It has all of those things. It's at the bottom of pretty much every index. It's at the bottom of the last country on the Human Development Index with Niger. But I would also like to underscore that it's a country that has tremendous potential. And there is tremendous potential for us to turn crisis into opportunity. And it's a country where, because it's a country where there's a lot of mineral wealth. It's actually it could be a very rich country if things were different. It has, as I said, tremendous mineral wealth, gold and diamonds. It has tremendous agricultural potential, and it's got huge hydropower potential as well. It currently exports lots of energy to neighboring countries and has the potential to probably solve a lot of the energy issues throughout the African continent. However, I'd like to have this picture on the back just to give a little bit of an understanding of what the environment looks like. This is a picture of Nyiragongo, and Goma is where our main office is located, and it apparently is one of the most dangerous places in the world, or cities in the world, because we have the threat of the volcano with a volcanic eruption that can come up come up in fissures beneath us. And it also has a lake, a very large lake, Lake Kivu nearby, whereby water sits on lots of gas and CO2 beneath it, and there's a chance of an earthquake upsetting that balance and actually killing everyone in the city. And if that wasn't enough, we have something like 40 rebel groups surrounding the city, and one of those groups, the M23, took the city in 2012, and Mercy Corps and its teams have, well, since I've been there, have had to evacuate our teams to various locations at least. Well, I've lost count. It's more than a dozen times. So it's you know, this is. So if a fight breaks out in the audience tonight, it'd be sort of like a normal occurrence for us. So actually, this is a bit it's a bit unstabling because it's just everything's calm. So it's a bit difficult for us. And the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis for not only ourselves but also our staff is it's very different to the life that we live in the West. There are the areas where we work are actually not controlled. Many of them are not controlled by the state at all. They're held by rebel groups. So we have to deal with that situation. And for our staff, corruption is a major problem that we have to deal with. It's just totally normal for staff members to pay for jobs, for women to prostitute themselves for jobs, or to have their sisters or siblings prostitute themselves so they can get a job. So it's a very difficult situation, and the system itself is so institutionally corrupt that anyone who succeeds well, or even staff who oppose this corruption, find themselves often at risk. And as we try and push up some of our national staff to higher levels of middle management and more senior roles, they're also at risk of being attacked during the night because they're seen as being wealthier than others, or for taking decisions that they're also at risk. So there were incidents where we also assist our staff to move over to the neighbouring Rwanda, or have safer lodgings in certain parts of the city. So that's just to give you an idea, and that this really represents the norm in many parts of the world in the 21st century. So, to understand, I think, I just wondered if there's any historians in the room, because to understand where we are today, it's important to understand the major phases of development that the country's gone through. So I was wondering if there are any historians in the town, in the room, because I would like to take you for a brief history of time, but I'd just like to apologize to any historians, because I'm trying to oversimplify the picture due to time. And I'm also forgetting to press this thing here. Okay. So to try and oversimplify things, the current situation can be explained as a result of things that happened way before colonialization occurred, and where the country was depicted by lots of small groups. There are around 250 ethnic groups in the DRC, mainly of Bantu origin, and they are hereditary. They're led by hereditary chiefs, and the balance and the hereditary chiefs would resolve issues, resource issues, and conflict issues through collaboration. I don't want to depict a picture that everything was rosy at that time, but that power was changed and threatened as a result of trade. In the 18th and 19th century, also the slave trade, and trading people from the community who became traders and who sold to other foreign traders coming in, either from Arabic origin or North Africa from Egypt, upset the power of balance, because the chiefs no longer had as much influence, and these traders became a lot more powerful, and therefore the whole political and social landscape changed. That was also exacerbated by people like Stanley, so a British explorer who was the first to open up the Congo entirely by, so the Congo is here, by traveling and opening up the Congo River, which is here. So he was the first one to go from the Indian Ocean, from coast to coast, along this route here, and circumvent Lake Victoria and also Lake Tanganyika. And the trade wasn't always friendly. Sometimes the traders would come in, foreign traders would come in that were based in Tanzania, around there, and would just pillage and take, rather than, as they say, waste time negotiating with village chiefs. So that's one big thing that happened. And then there was the quest for colonialization. I mean, it didn't have to go that way, but it did go that way in Africa, and as a result of the expansion of Western empires. And King Leopold II of Belgium came to power and had the ambition of also creating an empire for this young nation, and did so around the late 1800s. It went up until it was officially called a colony in 1908, and it was very brutal. It was at the time when rubber was emerged, and they made a lot of the money on the back of the rubber trade. Before it really took place in Asia, and it wasn't really until 1909, after Leopold's death, up until 1960, that it became the country developed, and it became a lot less violent. And if that were not enough, it gained its independence in 1960, which is at the time of the Cold War, whereby Western, so our governments, propped up this man here, Mobutu, so that the country didn't go red, and it was to stabilize the region. And as a result, lots of money went into the country, propping up all sorts of institutions, from the mining to water and utility companies. But it was a very, very institutionally corrupt country, and that continued up until the end of the Cold War, when Mobutu fell in 1997, and there were two presidents, the first Kabila, followed by the second Kabila, and the importance of Rwanda. This is the current president, Paul Kagame, who pretty much supported getting the son, this is Joseph Kabila, in power so he put him in power so that in exchange for territories in northeastern Congo. There was a genocide in 1994. Genocidaires fled to eastern Congo and was interested in gaining territory in that area, and also getting access to fight the rebels who had fled in that area. And also, it's a very rich area as well, and Rwanda's a very small place. So we end up with this with a very complicated situation and history in the DRC, tremendous potential on the one hand, really had a very turbulent history, and with this situation hanging over with lots of conflict in the DRC as a result of regional tensions that are very, very, very complicated. So the landscape right now is lots of armed groups that are there based on lots of ethnic and economic interests, and it's sometimes very, very hard to understand who's with who's supporting what, and it's changing all the time. So, what do we do? And so it's a very complicated situation. So what do we do? What is Mercy Corps? How should we respond? What strategy should we adopt? Yeah, and it's something that we're always asking ourselves questions over. To try and simplify that tonight, you haven't yet pointed that I have 1 minute remaining. I think we can categorize our work into two main areas. One is the needs of the urban areas, and the second, the needs of the rural poor. I will talk about the urban areas, and my colleague will also go on and explain more about what we do with the rural poor. One of the major things that are happening, particularly in the East, is that when there's a lot of conflict and insecurity in these rural areas, people tend to move towards cities for refuge. So cities are expanding. That's a picture of Goma. Goma has increased. The population of Goma is since I've been there since 2011, the beginning of 2011, the population has increased from around 600,000 to 1 million. So a lot of that is as a result of the insecurity that we've seen, but it's also a natural process of development, and cities all over the country and throughout Africa are increasing. So the impact that has is that the infrastructure is already not sufficient. As a result of the collapse of the colonial era, the infrastructure was built during the colonial era has essentially degraded and hasn't been maintained or improved correctly. The state being dysfunctional, I mean, this is an interesting one. This is just depicting a bit of urban planning. There was a house built. There's complete disorganization in the city. There was a house that was built, and well, they happened to decide to put a road through there, so they just cut the house in half. So that's how the urban planning was dealt with. I'm sure the owner was delighted. And really, there's just very poor planning, very poor infrastructure, and I'll go on to show you just a few examples of what was left from the colonial era. These are some pipes. That is supposed to be a pumping station to pump water through the system, and these are this pipe on the bottom. Here, you can see the illegal connections that have been installed and just taken off there. It's the same with the electricity. It's the same with everything. So it's very, very chaotic. So the major work that we've done is to address that by not just improving the infrastructure, which has involved, I think, breaking 1 million cubic feet of lava rock, because after I've missed the 2002 volcano, by the way, which obliterated pretty much all of the remaining infrastructure of the colonial period. So we had to remove and dig through trenches to ensure that the pipes can be buried underground and away from tampering. And there's a whole process that I really don't have time to go through. But Craig Redman, our vice president, I had a photo. I took that one out. He had a go at trying to break some of that rock, and yeah, it was pretty tough. But what it's involved is a huge amount of work for 5 years, and we had to, in the process, what it was is taking all the piping outside of the town to the hills. Here we had to actually construct a road access to outside the hills, and then it's fed back on gravity. This is just some of the. I could write a book about pretty much every photo. I can tell you. This was at one of the reservoirs, and as we were pouring the concrete on top of this reservoir once, and I was standing on top of there, I was wondering, you know, with 100 people on top of it, whether if it broke, what would actually happen with all these sticks pointing up towards us on the inside. But luckily, I was thinking headlines. You know, Mercy Corps has just killed 20 people in a very tragic way. That didn't happen, thankfully. But that was an interesting period. But and then we've put these pipes in. There's a story behind every one. This one where we put the pipes in during the night after we dug the trench in these very difficult conditions. The electricity company came and just put this post in there. Took the opportunity to not dig it. So there was lots of, I haven't got enough time to go through all these amusing stories, but this is the result after a very difficult time. There was an inauguration very recently. But I'd like to draw the attention that putting in the infrastructure is difficult, but it's the easy part. The hard part is then what do you do to ensure that you're not handing the infrastructure back to an incompetent and corrupt system of management. And what we're doing is that we are working with the government, because it's very important, with local communities and with the private sector to ensure that we change the system of management and influence the right people at high level and ensure that we put conditionality into our programs so that we work on the business model, because getting the business model right means that people can get access to water. Just to give you an indication of this program, the state, parastatal organization that was delivering, well, at least a little bit of water in Goma, was actually selling water via private operators up until very recently for 5 to 10 times the price of what we are now selling it now. So it's a huge gain for local people. So much so that we have queues and waiting lists at the new tap stands that are operated by a new independent operator, and we're still in the process of expanding it, but it takes a huge amount of work. That's where the real difficult and long-term commitment is required to get that right. And where we have to spend a lot of time at the highest levels influencing people to ensure that we can reform the utilities sector in the DRC. So I'm willing to take as many questions on the subject as necessary, but this is what it's all about. People having access. Just to give you an idea of the impact. This is how can I say, the water that they were buying in some of the poorer areas. So the further away people lived from the lake. Just to give you an idea, people were paying for a 20-liter jerry can. Were paying up to 500 Congolese francs, and there were 900 Congolese francs in a dollar. So they were paying extortionate amounts of money for that water, and now people have access for that for for 10 times less than that price. So it's really transformed the lives of a lot of people. Particularly women and children, who are walking 6 or 7 kilometers at 5 o'clock in the morning to get enough water for the day, now buy it at the tap stands no more than 300 meters from their houses. So it's having a huge impact on the lives of those people. 2 minutes, wow, I can't believe that I'm ahead of time. Let me just do a little dance for 2 minutes. So I wasn't expecting to be 2 minutes under time. So anyway, I can carry on and answer any questions that you may have afterwards. I would like to say that whilst doing the history part today, I discovered that that my colleague here, Solenne Delga, was actually a descendant of a French king, Louis IX. So I'd like to now present Solenne, who defends from royalty. So we actually have royalty here tonight, who can now deliver the second part of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. So that's the person I work with every day. Thank you very much. We're very happy to be here today. I will try to come back a little bit in time, Mark and Craig, and I think you've all seen today in the exhibition the violence that we work in, that people have to live through every day. And something that is important for us is to work with the people in urban areas, because a lot of people go to urban areas and they need to have this development happening. At the same time, we can't forget what's happening in rural areas, and I would like to come back to this a little bit, talk to you about what we call the market of violence. It's like everything is done through violence in rural areas. This is not, you don't use money, you don't use law, you use violence. This is what people know. And we're talking of 20 years of this, so it's an entire generation. Youth just understand violence. This is how they operate. And that makes it extremely complicated to navigate, because you don't know how transactions are going to happen. It's not a system that we necessarily understand very well. I will give you an example of when I first started in DRC. It was, I was doing an assessment. I was going to evaluate needs in one area where there had just been war. And I got to this place, and I was working on specifically access to water, which is the first need people usually need to address. And I remember asking this middle-aged guy about his access to water, where are the water points, where are the sources. And very quickly, he started talking to me, without me asking, about all the risk for women and kids related to access to water. And that was the first time in my short humanitarian experience that somebody was talking to me so openly about rape. It was too open. It was almost completely detached. I had no, I didn't know how to react. It was almost normal. Like, rape was something that happened so frequently for women and for kids that this person was talking to me about it in a completely open way. Now, today, after a year and a half in DRC, I understand this conversation a bit better. I can see why he would talk about it so openly, because violence is generalized. It's something that is part of the daily life. And so, how do you deal with this? How do you survive with such violence? And usually, the answer number one in DRC is you move. And you don't move, you can move like as part of urbanization. That is a normal process that we are seeing in Eastern DRC, but like what we call displacement is that you are forced to live. Imagine a situation you're at home and you hear gunshots and you know that the next one might be for you or one of your family members. So what do? Usually you run away. And what do you take with you? I think if you can grab all of your family members, that's already a good thing. And very, very often, you don't even have the time. It's usually women with with kids, but then they don't know where their husband is. And I don't know how many women I know that don't know if their husband is still alive, where he is, and have been single moms for years now. So one thing that is really hard to deal with as well is that you know that where you're going to flee to is not necessarily better than where you were before. And this is, unfortunately, the best we've been able to do in terms of shelter and trying to protect and provide for the people who've been displaced. We left everything behind and have no opportunities left. These are the camps for displaced people in North Kivu. So as you can see in some of these tents, you cannot stand. What do we try to do? So Mercy Corps, in rural areas, we really try to work with the most destitute. The destitute are those who have nothing left. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a future. So the first thing that we do, that is one of the most important work, like Mark presented about the water network and work on water we've done in urban areas, this is also something we do in camps in rural areas. We try to make sure that people will have access to clean water, enough to drink and to cook. That is 15 liters per day. 15 liters might be like 3 minutes into your shower in the morning, but this is what they get because that's all we can bring. So the water part is very important because Mark was like listing all of the plague that we have in Eastern DRC, and specifically around Goma. One of them missing is cholera. Cholera is endemic in most of the areas where we work. And it's very easy for kids to catch it, and a lot of people die of it. So that's something we really work on. Another thing that we really believe in, though, with Mercy Corps, and I've received tremendous support from the organization to work on this, is that people are destitute, they don't have much, but that doesn't mean they don't have a future. So we've been trying to make sure that they can restart small businesses. Here you can see women with their kids working on tailoring. This picture shows one of the means of transportation, the most common in Eastern DRC. It's called the chukudu. It's a transport. It's a means of transport for goods. It's one of the most successful business, like small business in Goma and in rural areas. And we also really invest in trying to find longer-term solutions, see beyond the immediate response to the needs of the destitute, and make sure that we will be able to address the chronic crisis in the DRC to hope for a better future. There is one very important mission that we have in the DRC, and I know this is not that obvious because the two people presenting today are white and from the West. But we do work with a lot of Congolese. We recruit a lot. More or less our ratio is 30 expats for 400 national staff we're working with. Until very recently, none of the Congolese staff was in leadership position. And now we have several expatriates actually reporting to Congolese staff. And we're investing in these people. We really hope that maybe they will be the leaders of tomorrow. And that's something we really believe in and is a huge part of our work with Mercy Corps. Mark and I were in London last week and we'll be in DC next week. We really try to bring attention to what's happening in the DRC. This year, in terms of crisis, has been a really hard one. It's been a lot of crises in the world, but it's still the case in DRC. It's 20 years of this, and it's really important that people don't forget. Right before I left for this, what we call a world tour, but it's actually only 3 locations. But some members of my team came to me and was like, Solenne, please do a good job when you're there, because we need it. They need to know. And I hope I will come back and say I did a good job when you never know. Yeah, and something like one of the messages we wanted to pass on today is that don't think that because you're so far away from DRC, you cannot actually have influence on what's happening there. One of the huge problems that we have is that the Congolese government is not necessarily investing in the country. They tax a lot the population, but we don't know where the tax money is going, because if you come, you see pipes that have obviously not been maintained for a very, very long time. One of the things that we think can help is lobbying with your own government here, because the US government definitely have power and leverage in the DRC. So please continue talking to your own representative, because this is something that will definitely help what we're doing and mostly the people we work for. One last word of conclusion, and we will be very happy to respond to any of your questions, is before I moved to the DRC, I had been to not very easy places, but I had a pretty bad view of the place. I don't know, I thought that would be very difficult to work in this environment. And I'm guessing, I saw the exhibition right before talking today. I don't think I've completely processed it yet, but I'm guessing for those who've seen it, you kind of like have the same type of vision. It doesn't look that good, right? But I wanted to finish with you on one thing, because today I've definitely changed the way I see Congo. I think it's very important to balance the way, I'd like you to also live with nice images, with maybe all the colors of DRC, not only pink and black. So here are a few images. So the deadly lake Mark was talking about, that's also what it looks like in sunset. These are, the mountains in the DRC are extremely green, like Ireland, pretty much. It's beautiful. There's a lot of life in these mountains as well, not only conflict. This area makes one of the best cheese in DRC. I'm French, so I don't know if I really like it, but the Massissi cheese is very, very well known in the Congo. These are other pictures of the mountains and the lake. And of course, despite a lot of conflict in the park where we have so many of the resources, you have the wildlife that has been protected. Gorillas are obviously the best known. And then you obviously have the population. Congolese are amazing. They smile a lot. They love music. Congo is the country with so much music, so much good and sometimes really bad music, but still great music. Art and the kids and the hope that, there will be a better future. Thanks very much, and we're happy to take any of your questions.
We're not used to this technology. I think we can just use this, yeah?
Okay.
Thanks, thank you.
Anyways.
Yes, please. I didn't get the last bit. And the wealth. Yes.
The violence,
yeah.
the amazing amount of violence. Oh, thank you. And the wealth.
Yeah.
I think Mark mentioned it a little bit, but there are multiple interests in the DRC and specifically in the Kivus. You have the nature is wealth. One of them specifically is access to land. It's land to build something, to produce, and very often it's also because you have resources, minerals mostly, so gold, copper, cobalt. So there is a possibility for resources that is absolutely amazing in just one region. And so a lot of people are interested, and not only Congolese, that's for sure. I would invite you, I don't know how many of you have heard of the new documentary called Virunga, that is specifically on the park, the national park that is just outside of Goma. It's an interesting account of what these resources and why they bring so much violence. I would recommend that you look at it. I think it's pretty accurate. It's like the relationship that you're talking about is like in a state where you don't have a real state, where impunity is stronger than any type of law and order. what prevails is how do you get access to resources and the goods. What prevails is violence. And that would be the resources, like the link for me, is like you use violence to get to these resources. And then since you have so many people interested, and I'm like, including ourselves and our countries, that, since it's not based on any type of regulation, people fight. And that's how the violence come into the picture. Thank you.
The Chinese have been very active in Africa in a number of areas. Do you see them at all in the Congo?
Yes, we do. I mean, pretty much everyone is present in the Congo. There's, just to try and depict again the wealth and the violence in Katanga, and so it's not in this particular region here in the east, but in Katanga is a very big mining area. And the Chinese, the Russians, the US, the Brits, everyone's there. There's also there's also less mining, but there's still some mining in the Kivus in the east where we are. There's a few mining companies, and of course, some companies have better records than others. Some are trying to be very transparent and do things well, but everything's up for grabs in the DRC. I mean, there is law and order. Anything's up for grabs, really. So I mean, I really do encourage any of you to watch. Don't want to be political here, but I mean, we're supposed to. We're not neutral. We can't be neutral, but we definitely want to be impartial. But you can watch the Virunga film Virunga on Netflix, and it shows just one snapshot of that in the east, which is where the national park is, and where a company is trying to, British company, not so happy to report, is trying to get access to oil in that region. So you can watch that, yeah. So yes, the Chinese are there.
What is the role of the UN in the Congo?
That's my pet. No, I'll just start that question because that's exactly the question. It's the first question. Craig, can you please leave the room? That's the first question I asked when I got to the DRC, and the response was a lot of people are asking the same question. So, I mean, to be fair, the UN plays multiple roles. There's the black UN, there's the blue UN, and there's a big peacekeeping force in the DRC. In actual fact, it's the biggest peacekeeping force anywhere in the world. I've lost count now, but it used to be 25,000 troops. I think it's maybe 22,000, or it's definitely above 20,000. And one of the big criticisms of the UN prior to 2012, and as a result of the armed group M23 taking the city of Goma, was, well, what was the UN doing? And the response was, well, we didn't have the mandate to really get engaged, and there was a resolution to ensure that they put a special brigade in called the FIB, to be an attacking force and to remove armed groups. Certainly that it has been effective to a certain extent. It has removed the M23. It's aggressively pursuing the FDLR as we speak. We don't know how that's going to affect our programs, but it's not really the long-term solution, in my opinion, personal opinion, because we really need to deal with the root causes of what's going on, not only in the East but throughout the country, and I think that there's lots written on the subject. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to write a testimony to the Senate in when was it? February, I think, February, March last year. And I think that outlines, amongst other people who also wrote testimonies, outlines what the real issues are and what we think the long-term solutions are. Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah, Mark talked about what we call the Black UN, so that's the peacekeeping mission, and the Blue UN are the agencies that maybe you've heard of. It's UNICEF, UNHCR. These agencies have the role, and it's a very important role in the DRC, to coordinate any type of emergency response. That is, if we have, for example, right now, there is a huge possibility that over 300,000 people are going to be displaced because of this offensive against the FDLR. So the UN has basically the role of coordinating this, making sure that we preposition stocks, that we're ready to respond to whatever is going to happen to the population. So that's a pretty important role in where we work, but Mark is right in the sense that it's not a long-term solution to the problems in the DRC.
Throw over a coup.
Okay. It's complicated, but in the East, just to keep it, to paint a very broad schematic picture. I don't know how many of you know much about the Rwandan genocide, but there were Hutus genocidaires who fled to the eastern DRC and formed an armed group, and then as a result of that, there was an armed group that was formed in pursuit of that armed group, so there was a proxy war going on. Actually, I don't know how we managed to miss the fact that as a result of these wars, there's 5 million people who have been killed, and it's the biggest humanitarian disaster since the Second World War. Sorry, I forgot that bit. But I was assuming a lot of people knew. I don't know how I forgot that. And it's not as a result of bullets. It's a result of this continuous displacement that Solenne was talking about, and deaths of cholera, malnutrition, and so on and so forth that affect many women and children in particular. So that is the essence. And then there are many. It would take a day to describe the landscape, but there's lots of other interests, political as well. Many political leaders that are from ethnic groups who also use their influence in order to set up armies in order to get hold of some of the mineral wealth that are in the region. So it's a very. And then there's the whole political situation of Rwanda wanting more. Expanding territorial gains as a result of this instability. So it's really it's complicated. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah. One other thing maybe that is missing in this landscape is that we're talking about how violence is used to grab resources. One of them is access to land, because land is not really regulated. There is no real property. It's a lot of different, superposition of a lot of different laws. So sometimes militias are just created to protect one piece of land. So that's why it gets super complicated, because sometimes it's just protections, sometimes it's linked to economic interests, sometimes it's ethnic. It's a bit of a mess. And I think Mark said at the beginning that it's also alliances change all the time. And sometimes you have what you could say counter-nature alliances between two ethnic groups, but for one economic interest. So honestly, I think it's hard to say that we understand everything about the conflict dynamic in Congo. It's extremely complicated. Thank you.
Sorry, there's someone who's got the microphone, but then yeah.
And then I'll pass it to you.
And then we pass
How's
it down.
that?
Yeah, sorry.
Hi. You talked about how you are trying to develop leaders among the Congolese who work for you. Could you talk a little bit about how you nurture their leadership?
Okay. so I'll be very candid with you, because the situation, because of the situation in the Congo, corruption is just normal, and therefore, as an organization, we can't tolerate that, and we need to really invest and be very strong. I'll say we have to be very, very strong in not tolerating that. So it's a very long process of really identifying raw talent, and also identifying people who don't want to have to prostitute their siblings, and who don't want to have to bribe people continuously, who want to live in a different way, and who also have the strength of character to stand up to those things, because it takes a huge amount of personal risk in the DRC in order to stand up to those things. Also for us as well, I mean, there's some of our staff, expatriate staff, we're less at risk, but there's still some key people who are at risk. Needless, actually, myself, I must say, I'm the one who signs all the termination contracts, so that doesn't always go down too well. But then what we do is train those people. I mean, there's some amazing talent, seriously. I mean, we've got some tremendous people coming up through the ranks who we then put on programs. We've got Mercy Corps has specifically designed programs for national staff, and then just bring them through the ranks, and now we have situations where we're going to have some experienced, well, not the most senior, but experienced expatriate staff reporting to new national leaders, and we also try and our aim is not to expatriate, it's to minimize that as much as possible, and to bring these people up through the ranks. And for me, that's a big part of our job. I mean, we don't know where these people could be tomorrow. They could be running the country in 20 years' time, and that's for all of us. It's a tremendous sense of pride that we see when we succeed. Yeah.
The urban water stations that you showed earlier, how many people does that feed in a day, and are you developing more of those?
Okay, great question. So the city of Goma is around. So the system itself doesn't tackle private connections, which are all like the well-off or the richer areas close to the lake. So it's expanded the system into the areas through public tap stands, and the overall area is 400,000. We're increasing that under a new phase of the program, which will last another 5 years, of about 150,000. So anywhere between 500,000, and we've also we're extending the project into 2 new cities, starting with one that's been confirmed, and the overall target is 1.55 million people. Yeah, so currently, the first phase of the program was launched on the 1st of April, and we've been opening up the tap stands progressively to make sure that the management system's working. I'm glad to say that we've got an unprecedented recovery rate of 98% of the water that's distributed. So the system's working well, and we're currently, I would say, around 100,000 people every day are buying water from that system.
You know, following on the water conversation and capacity building, I'm not sure if I understood in your presentation that one of your kiosk servers, did it almost sound like it was privatized and he was selling the water, or she, and I'm just interested in that management system. Are you building a system that you're turning over to someone, and how would you do that? How does someone get to become a kiosk vendor? And I would imagine in a corrupt system like that, it would be a highly sought after location to be.
Yeah, that's a great question. I could talk to you for 3 hours on the subject, but to try and keep it very simple. Mercy Corps had been working, so we call it the pilot management, the management system project actually, and what we've done is we've taken a sub-delegation of power. So the state, the parastatal organization, which is based in the capital Kinshasa, is somewhat like the holder of water utilities throughout the country, and it's supposed to be the regulator. The parastatal organizations are operating in the centers, in the urban centers, which are called provincial régidiso, so the provincial level. They're supposed to be the operator. The issue is that they don't do that very well, and the system, the checks and balances, and also the motivations don't work very well for a number of reasons. A lot of economic reasons, but also the fact that, well, they can sell water more lucratively without checks and balances. Just to give you an idea, around 45% of the water produced in Goma goes to its employees. And then the employees then take it and resell it at 10 times the price. So that's what we're dealing with. So what we've done is we've extended the system, but not through private connections, by creating an entirely new part of the system that targets specifically people who, one, didn't have access to water, and two, would have water distributed via public tap stands. So in a sense, it's like a new market. And by doing so, we put conditionality and negotiated with the state and also with other actors, including the World Bank and the German Development Bank, to ensure that, that we can take a subdelegation of power from them and gradually develop a private enterprise, not meaning that it's necessarily for profit. We've started that by working with a local NGO, so a Congolese-led NGO with whom we've been working for a number of time and for a number of years, and that NGO has had a successful track record in selling water in tap stands in the IDP camps that have been there for around 10 years. So through that process, we've started now to establish like an independent, if you like, it's probably a better way of putting it, an independent water organization, operator. And the long-term vision, which we're still working out, is that how do we now ensure that we get the governance right and that we take this operator and take it to scale. So we're in the process of doing that, but it's looking very well so far. Just to answer the question of who becomes the tap stand operator, previously the régidiso, that locations where the parastatal organization located its tap stand, the person who owned the land would be the operator, and that's a recipe for failure, because just because you own land doesn't mean you're going to be a good operator. So we don't do that. We now pay a small rent for a very small location on someone's land, and the operators are employed by this organization separately. In the long term, we may open that up to competition, but there's also lots of other social considerations. Like they've been dominated by men in the past, and that's we've seen that to also not be successful. It's much better if we target women to operate those, because women are the ones who buy the water, and therefore there are less sexual harassment issues and so on and so forth. Is that okay? Okay. So, I could go on for 3 hours, isn't it?
One last question, please.
Well,
So my understanding is during all the wars and the different factions, there was a number of children who were abducted and to actively become soldiers in those conflicts. So is there an effort either from Mercy Corps or that you're aware of that's helping to integrate those former child soldiers back into some of these efforts?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think they are both the child soldiers that were abducted from the beginning, and also a way, like, when you don't have any other opportunity, any other economic opportunity, you haven't been to school, it's like for young men mostly, it's usually the best option to enroll in an armed group. So it's a huge, huge issue, and it's really like a very good question. Mercy Corps doesn't work directly on this issue, but there are like, you know, a number of organizations on the ground that are definitely dealing directly with this. We do provide economic opportunities to try to provide an alternative, but for the reinsertion of child soldiers, you have organizations that are specialized in like the needs of kids and how does that work and where specifically, because it's very complicated sometimes to find their family. They cannot be integrated in, like, you know, whatever area, because sometimes for ethnic reasons it's not possible. So there are like organizations that are specialists in this type of topics and work specifically with children. We work more with like older youth, people who have started working, and we can help reintegrate into the society. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we were told it was the last question. I don't know if there are like very urgent topics that you would like to ask.
Well, we can take. We're told we can take another one. Well, there's a lot. There's a number more. Okay.
I was wondering about the opportunities for education for the children.
Do you want to take that? Do you want to take? No, go ahead. Okay. Yes. I mean, education is important. The thing is in the DRC there are tremendous there's needs in every area. So as an organization, without going into too much detail, what we've done is we've prioritized. We've got strategies. We've developed 3 divisions, and rather than just respond to various calls, you know, does anyone want to work on this from various organizations, for various donors? It's important for us to be successful and have impact and take things to scale and do things in a much more meaningful way, is one, become very specialists in areas. One, because, well, we can learn as we go. We can attract and keep very high. We can build up the capacity of our own teams, whether they're national and also expatriate teams, and be much more focused. We don't specialize in education. I think it's important. There are other organizations that do that, but yeah, you know, education, the judiciary, governance. What we're trying to do is deal with those sorts of issues in these separate divisions. On education, what we do is particularly with regards to health and hygiene. So it's not education per se, but we have a substantial health education program within our water programs, and you know, maybe you could say something about that. But there's a whole approach that we take to ensure that people understand the health risk, because it's not just a question of giving clean water. If the water then becomes contaminated from the point of source to then the home, then you still haven't solved the problem of disease. So that's what we do.
Sorry, just one thing. We don't do education directly, but there was just a large grant that is open for competition that was published by the US government and the British government together. So for 2015, education has been, and I think onwards, because I think the program will be for at least 5 years, it's been prioritized specifically education. The complexity of education in Congo is, you know, it's like with displacement, it's very hard for one kid to be able to access the same school. So now we're working a lot on mobile schools and trying to find different options. But it remains, and like it's for sure, it remains probably one of the biggest challenges in the country.
Last question, anyone? Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear. The city of joy. The City of Joy. What about the City of Joy?
It's a sanctuary for women, protected for women who have disabilities.
Have you heard of that? I haven't heard, but there's a number of there are lots of organisations that address that issue. There's a Don Bosco organisation that addresses that in Goma, but there are many others. I'm not aware of all of. I mean, there are literally hundreds of lots of small organisations doing all sorts of work. We did have some experience with that during the siege of Goma by the M23 in 2012, where we provided temporary shelter for huge numbers of people in that area, just actually to help protect women from rape as a result of this huge displacement that occurred during that period. But so sorry, I can't really talk on that. Sorry.
Sorry, over here. I was wondering, how does Mosse Corps, or does Mosse Corps work with neighboring countries in the DRC to help to ensure what you guys are doing is being fully supported by the neighboring communities and the government?
Can you just speak a bit louder? How do we?
How does Mosse Corps work with neighboring countries to ensure what you guys are doing is going to be something that's long-lasting and something that's going to continue to be implemented by the local communities and the neighboring countries? If that makes sense.
Yeah, neighboring countries. Okay, so Mosse Corps has a presence in Uganda. It's not. We don't have a presence in Rwanda. Although a number of our staff actually live there. We're present in Ethiopia, in Kenya, so we're present in the Central African Republic, in South Sudan, so a lot of the countries bordering the DRC. In terms of the sustainability of our programs, I mean that's the big question, that's the big aim, one of the major aims of the work that we do. So, for example, just as we've been talking about the water project, our aim is to have a business model that works beyond the life of the program, so that we don't have to come back and intervene and put in the infrastructure again, as has been happening all the time when you hand infrastructure, for example, back to a system that doesn't work. So. Yeah, the sustainability of things is often difficult to do. The sustainability of the emergency response is harder, is much harder, and we try to address that through building more resilient communities, so that they can deal with conflict and deal with the difficulties of the environment in a much more sustainable way. Yeah, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but hopefully that helps. What we can do is so I'm just signing up our organisation to say what we can do is we can put some information perhaps on our website related to this event. So if anyone, and really you're quite welcome to email us or contact us if you like any information. So thank you very much.
Well, Mark and Solenne and Craig, thank you so much for doing this, and a big thank you to Mosse Corps for shedding light on this important issue. One final point, the exhibition actually has been extended to April 12th, so we're very excited about that, and so please spread the word about it, spread the word about the issues in the Congo, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.